I'm Joanne. This is the Turtle Stack, where I talk with guests about topics they love, even though I don't know much about it. We use 2 guidelines, no slamming, no selling. So we do our best to keep focused on the positive instead of tearing something down and without pushing agendas. We just want to focus on having an open mind to something new and building up the things we enjoy. Let's get into it. This week, I am here with Brendan from the podcast Talk Egg to Me. What are we going to be talking about today, Brendan?
Well, thanks for having me on, Joanna. I greatly appreciate this opportunity. Today, we're just going to be talking about agriculture overall, where your food comes from, some of the tech that goes into it, that kind of thing.
Fantastic. Agriculture is a topic that I have not put a lot of thought into, so I'm looking forward to learning some of the stuff behind it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Do you want to start by saying what your experience is with agriculture?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of an important part of the conversation, why should you listen to me kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in, right in the smack dab middle of California, basically. And in that whole valley is just agriculture. It's all farms, dairies, ranches, all kinds of stuff. And so I was raised around a lot of different types of farms. And my family all worked on different farms. I didn't really take an interest into it until I got into high school, but it's always been just being part of my life. And then when I got into high school, I got really, really involved in a youth leadership program called FFA, or the Future Farmers of America. And basically from there, I was taught public speaking skills, job interview skills, a lot of leadership development kind of stuff, as well as a lot of background information in different aspects of agriculture. I learned a lot of different speaking skills and that sort of thing. And because of that, I got really, really passionate about teaching people about agriculture outside of the classroom. And so basically all the speaking that I do a lot of research to try to prepare for speeches. And because of that, I've educated myself on just about every agricultural topic there is. I mean, I'm not all knowing about all there is about food, just because that's not really possible. But I do like to pride myself in at least knowing enough to give a basic description of most different types of industries. So
awesome. So I know, on your podcast, you go into a lot of different things. If you were to pick one thing that you're really excited about with agriculture and the direction it's going or some of the advancements, what do you think that would be?
Ooh, that's a great question. There's so much in the future of agriculture that's just really, really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to. So in my hometown of Tulare, every year we have what's called the World Ag Expo, and we get people from all around the world, not just the United States, but I mean, I've met people from Germany, Sweden, Italy, all over the place. And there we learn about so many different types of new technologies coming to agriculture, and they're all so interesting. And before I got into agriculture, I was a big tech nerd. I mean, I still kind of am, but I studied robotics and drones and artificial intelligence and all this kind of stuff. And to learn that we're using all of it to grow food was just really, really interesting to me. So I've learned a lot about some of the up and coming tech, but I think I'm really excited for some of the stuff that's actually happening that's not so mechanical. Some of the new practices that are being done with low tillage and really concentrating on soil health, and a lot of the biology that's going into growing the crops and raising the animals that, I mean, seems like basic knowledge that we should know by now, but it's very, very new. And so there's a lot of farmers that are trying things that haven't really been tried before. And I think that's probably one of the most exciting things of all, because it's not something that we have to build to try. It's something that we just have. It's always kind of been there, and we just never really knew what to do with it.
Yeah. So you mentioned crop rotation is one of those things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And my understanding of that is certain crops take nutrients out of the ground, so the next year you plant a different crop that uses different nutrients. Is that?
That's not entirely wrong. There's some different. It's a little bit more complex than that. So crop rotation. The reason that crop rotation happens, and the reason farmers use that practice, is because whenever, like you said, whenever you put crops into the ground, they drain the soil of a lot of different vital nutrients that's needed not just for the crops, but also for the soil microbiome, which this is getting a little bit more microbiology kind of stuff, but there's a lot of mini ecosystems living underneath the dirt, basically. And so whenever the crops are planted for too long and they take all that soil or all the nutrients out, it makes it really hard to grow anything after that. And so they trade out for a different crop to, try to allow the soil to kind of regain its nutritional status that was out before, and also to try to take different nutrients, that way it doesn't burn out the soil again. But also there's a lot of crops that are being used in the crop rotation system that are either genetically modified or crossbred, or there's a lot of different methods they use for them that actually can draw the nutrients from outside sources and put it into the soil to try to regenerate some of that health.
Really?
Oh yeah. There's cover crops, and I wish I could give you examples. I don't remember what they were. I know it's some legumes. I couldn't give you a specific crop, but there's some legumes that have been genetically modified to take nitrogen out of the air and put that nitrogen back into the soil to try to regenerate some of that health and actually try to, lower some of the carbon footprint that agriculture has, try to get some of that methane out of the air, all that kind of stuff.
That's really amazing. To me, that sounds like something that any farmer could use in any country or like environment, knowledge is useful to everybody.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's one of the biggest things right now is as much as agriculture is a competitive enterprise, because it is an industry, it's a business, it's all one big community. You know, everyone who farms is looking out for each other. That way they could all grow the best and healthiest and safest food for their population. And, you know, you hit the nail right on the head. Knowledge is power in this case. So anything we can learn that can advance our farming practices, make the food safer and the environment cleaner, and get the food out there faster and for more people, I mean, they're going to do it.
Yeah, and I definitely think part of the point of your podcast, and I absolutely agree with it, is everybody needs farmers to be doing well. So yeah, power to them working together and finding solutions to problems most of us don't have to think about because our food is taken care of for us.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's a lot of, I guess I'll say, pushback from certain parts of the market. And the whole reason I even started my podcast is just because I've seen a lot in my life that people see a Facebook post that says something incorrect about the industry, and then they base, voting choices or consumer purchasing choices or that sort of thing off of that. And in the short term and in the long term, that hurts the farmer. That's kind of the inspiration of the podcast as a whole, is just try and get the word out there, say like, hey guys, farmers are doing good things. Let's try to watch out for them too, kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm definitely in full support. So, so you mentioned a few different things. One of them, I remembered the word tilling because I know kind of what tilling is, but I forget what other word was associated with it.
Basically, tilling is, they use a machine that can dig into the earth, and it basically just kind of breaks up all of the ground and separates it and makes it basically more available for crops to be grown easier. Mm-hmm. But we've started to see farmers approach a new practice called no-tilling, which no-tilling basically means you don't touch the ground. You let it sit as it is. You don't dig into it. You don't mix it up. You don't mess with the soil, because we began to learn about, like I mentioned earlier, those microbiomes in the soil and how important and vital those are to keeping the soil health strong and to keeping the soil, the crops, much more healthy and having nutrients available to them. And if you till, you break up those microbiomes, and you're actually disturbing the ability for that soil to gain more nutrition faster. That way those crops can develop off of it. So basically, it's part of a new method of agriculture called regenerative agriculture. Basically, all it means is we're trying to leave things as natural as possible. That way, the less we damage the soil, hopefully the healthier the crops will be. And it's not perfectly tested yet enough to know whether or not it works, but it's something that we're trying, and it seems to have fairly positive results so far.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess I feel like if I were a farmer and you could tell me that I could skip a step and it would actually be healthier for my crops, that sounds like a really good deal to me.
Oh, yeah. And it's not the easiest thing to convince farmers to try that, just because farmers are very set in their ways and kind of skeptical about trying things that could potentially, lose them money or slow their production. But once you get just a few on board and everyone else sees that it's working, then it kind of spreads like wildfire from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else would you like to kind of share about the world of farming?
I think the biggest thing I would like to share is that, and I'm kind of taking the direction that I think is kind of the best way to phrase this. The agricultural community, and when I say agriculture is much more than just farming. It's kind of expanded beyond that. Now we have a lot of different science divisions that are associated with agriculture. They have soil scientists and biologists and environmentalists and all these different categories of science that are focused on just trying to make sure that the farming practices that we're doing are healthy and safe, and that they're actually helping the earth and they're helping the population instead of hurting it. We've developed scientific branches of agriculture to help with that sort of thing. We've developed lawyer branches of agriculture to help with the regulations and with the laws that are potentially harming farmers. We've developed a communications department of agriculture, and that's actually what I'm going into, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now, ag advocacy kind of stuff, teaching people about farming and trying to get more attention to the industry. Basically, the big takeaway is there's a lot of different moving pieces in agriculture besides just the farmers. But in the farming community, everyone's there to try to help each other. Everyone's there to try to produce the best product for their consumer. And, I often hear people worried about, the safety of their food with, like pesticides and with antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. The number one thing I could say is that agriculturalists, farmers, anyone in that community, their number one best interest is producing a healthy and safe product for their consumer, because if it's not healthy and safe, then all of their money goes away, basically. So it doesn't make much sense to produce a not healthy and safe product.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And a big part of it is people assume that to support agriculture means to be a farmer. That's not true at all. I mean, by eating food, you're supporting agriculture. That's what the entire job is about. And so we're just looking for people to be more aware of what's going into the industry kind of thing. And, I don't say that to be all preachy and say you need to go support agriculture kind of thing. But basically, I think that I think it's a fair statement to say that food should be our priority above anything else.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, without food, we're not getting very far. I think one of the things that I might like to ask, though, is do you have any information about agriculture that you think would surprise a lot of people? Like something that the misconception is wrong or that they're doing that people would be like, I had no idea that was a factor.
That basically describes the entire industry right now. My entire job is associated with trying to address some of those misconceptions. And so if I were just to address a few of the misconceptions I think are kind of a big thing, I think labels are one of the most dangerous misconceptions about agriculture. The whole, GMO-free, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, all those kinds of labels are a big issue for farmers. It causes a lot of worry among the agricultural community because a lot of people disagree with the fact that labels are even used at all on food. I mean, besides like nutritional labels, but like what we consider the fear-mongering labels, which is kind of a heavy term, but that's kind of what the agricultural community thinks of them, just because they disagree with why they're being used in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's kind of I'm not gonna say the struggle right now, but that is kind of the project right now, is trying to see how can we incorporate agriculture into media in a way that consumers are going to trust it. Because basically the only interaction with agriculture that the media has had over the past 20, 30 years or so are just people who are spreading false information, or maybe it's not entirely false, but there's a couple missing facts here and there, or it's not presented in the correct context. That was an issue for a long time, but we're kind of getting past that, and I'm kind of glad to see that's happening, because I mean that conversation doesn't get us anywhere.
Right.
If I had to address a couple other big misconceptions, these are kind of ones that are a little more on the lighthearted side, which is why I like to talk about these, but I don't know why they didn't come to mind earlier. The big one is ag tech. And this is actually one of the things that we were talking about before we started this episode, is that agriculture uses a ton of technology that people aren't fully aware of. I mean, your average consumer, when they think of a farmer, I guarantee, the first thing that comes to mind is not what a farmer is today. They might think of, a guy in blue overalls with a straw hat and, a pitchfork and a pail, or maybe they think of something a little bit more advanced than that, but it's not the scientists, the technologists, the environmentalists that farmers are today. We use a lot of different types of technology in agriculture now. We use robots, we use drones, we use artificial intelligence, we use all kinds of stuff that's not even available to the public, really.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
So when you say robot, I'm assuming you don't mean like C-3PO type robot.
So it's funny you say that. So when I say robot, I don't mean Wall-E. I don't mean, R2-D2 or basically when I say robot, they're not like personified, like robots that have a face that you can recognize, although we're not far from that. And that was kind of a fun thing to learn. I learned that just a couple weeks ago, that there's actually robot companies that are developing farming robots that have names and that have personalities, kind of, which is kind of funny because they're based off of artificial intelligence. They're not, dramatically smart like R2-D2 and C-3PO, but they do have at least somewhat of a personality outside of just their day-to-day job. And they're actually developed by a company called the Small Robot Company. I promise that's the actual name. I'm not just making that up. And the Small Robot Company produces 3 little robots. One's name is, or what are their names? I think it's Tom, Dick, and Henry, or maybe it's Harry. I can't remember what the last one's name is. And there's an artificial intelligence overseer that runs the 3 robots, and her name is Wilma. And yeah, so this company, and I actually listened to a podcast that talked about why they produce these, and the Small Robot Company actually made a really good point, and they said that by making these robots kid friendly, kind of like giving them names and giving them kind of personalities, and they have like little bios on the website to talk about what they do and what they like and all that kind of stuff. It basically makes them more consumer friendly. That way, if the consumers know we're using robots in the fields, they don't get worried about robots handling their food. They're like, oh yeah, Tom's out in the field spraying the weeds.
My immediate thoughts on that is, if Wilma has a Twitter account, I will follow her. So they need to get on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the entire idea behind it is that, we're trying to find methods of bridging that gap between consumer and farmer, because there's been, like I said earlier, there's been a bit of a communication gap between the two. And so if, robots named Tom and Harry are the ticket to that, we're going to use it. And so to kind of get back to my original explanation, because I got off track with the Small Robot Company, because I thought they were funny. The robots we use in agriculture are not, like I said, they're not Wall-E, they're not R2-D2. They are designed for a specific purpose. Maybe it's a a drone that's controlled by an artificially intelligent computer that it makes the drone fly over the field, and it can scan for areas where there's a lot of bugs present, and they can spray there. That way those bugs aren't damaging the crops. Or it can scan the soil and see areas where there's not enough moisture, so they can go water that part of the field. Or, it can scan the herd and see if they're missing a cow or two. I mean, imagine like your Roomba, like how you program a Roomba in your house, and it has a path that it follows whenever it vacuums, and it knows its path. This technology is something that we haven't really had in agriculture. It's kind of a new generation of farmers that is what we call agriculture 4.0.
I will say, I hope that your robots are smarter than my Roomba, though. My Roomba's name is Vern, and he constantly gets caught on the cat bowl and spills water all over himself. So he might not be the best example to go off of.
Yeah, ours is named Ruby. She gets stuck behind the couch a lot. Although Roomba might have some intelligent issues, the programming is still the same. You map out the course, and the robot's able to follow it and do the job that it was intended to do, and that sort of thing. So it's not WALL-E, but we're not super far off yet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's also one of those things that if they're developing that technology for farmers, once that exists, they can take it and apply it to different parts of the world. So we not only benefit as consumers of food, but also from just growth in technology as a whole. When one subculture develops, we all get to develop along with them.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen a lot of partnership between farmers and tech companies lately, and that's something that's somewhat new to the agriculture industry. I mean, we've always had technology in ag, but with this new generation of ag 4.0, as I called it earlier, basically it's the idea that everything is being automized now, and that farmers are having to have a relationship with some kind of tech person to run some of the different types of technology. So like you have to have a pilot's license to fly certain drones. And so farmers have to get a pilot to come on there, or they have to get certified themselves to fly their drones. There are a lot of computer scientists who went to school at MIT for, however many years to become computer scientists, ended up working on farms just because the technology needs them for that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the C3PO being a robot on a farm kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I did want to bring up the fact that at the time of recording, the episode that comes out this following Wednesday, he actually asked me what Star Wars droid I thought would make the best farming robot. And we had this whole long discussion about it. So before I give that answer, which farming robot do you think, or which Star Wars droid do you think would make a good farming robot?
I'll be honest, I haven't watched a ton of Star Wars, so I pretty much only know C3PO and R2-D2.
Okay.
And I just like R2-D2 better. So, yeah. I'm gonna vote R2.
That's a fair vote, and I'll tell you why. So I actually voted for R2 as well, and I'm a massive Star Wars fan, so that should kind of tell you just how good of a droid R2-D2 is.
Okay.
But he was thinking C3PO because he's very intelligent. He'd be able to scan, he'd be able to work out all the business stuff and all that. And I was like, yeah, but he'd worry the entire time. He would not make a very good farming robot. He'd make a good manager, I guess. But we're talking about farming robots. I want like R2-D2 or someone out there. We had like this whole discussion about it, and that gave me this idea for. I think I might make merch out of this eventually. I haven't decided yet. But a tractor that has. So you know how in the spaceships, whenever R2-D2 is sitting in the spaceship, he has like this little like hole that he sits in.
Yeah.
So I would imagine like a tractor, and in the front of it, there's a little hole for R2-D2 to sit in, and he's just driving the tractor.
Yes to that idea. Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that question out there. I know that, you've had like, Harry Potter fans on your podcast and that sort of thing. So I'm sure you have some kind of Star Wars fan listening. So I'd be curious to hear their response.
If you are a Star Wars fan listening, contact me to be on the show, respond to that specifically, and tell me a bit more about Star Wars.
Well, a big part of what I like to do on my podcast, and we can talk about this more whenever we go into my episode, but basically I like to incorporate a lot of non-ag related things and tie them back to agriculture to show people that, agriculture is not just an exclusive community. I've talked about, like I said, WALL-E, I talked about Star Wars, we've talked about video games like Stardew Valley, and, basically I pride myself in being able to relate agriculture to pretty much anything just to show just how deep and expansive this industry is.
That's really wonderful and I think really important because we start seeing labels as other people. I'm not a farmer, so what could I ever have in common with a farmer? Well, a farmer is still going to watch WALL-E with their kids on a Saturday night, so you have that in common. Those things that bridge the gap between groups of people and start showing we have this in common, we can talk about it through this scope. That's really valuable.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I agree. I completely agree on the whole label thing. Like, the more we find reasons to divide ourselves, the less we can wonder why we fight all the time. Like, we can't separate ourselves. Like, we can't forcibly separate ourselves and then wonder why nobody likes us, kind of thing. Like, the more we can find in common, the better, and the easier life is going to be for everybody. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah, perfect. Is there anything else that you want to share or any final thoughts on your topic?
I mean, this is the same thing I advocate for on my podcast. You don't have to be a massive supporter of agriculture. You don't have to be a farmer. You don't have to get involved in farming communities. But more than anything, if you read a Facebook post, if you hear something from a friend, if you read something online, just, do your homework. Like, go do some research, go fact check it, go double check before you start assuming, that something is how it is. And, just understand that the people growing your food are also having to eat that food. So it's important to all of us.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So again, if people are looking for you, I know your podcast is Talk Egg to Me. Where else would you recommend they find you?
I mean, if they're looking for just the podcast, it's Talk Ag to Me pretty much everywhere. Anywhere you find podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's all Talk Ag to Me. If you're looking for me personally, my full name is Brendan Black. It's Brendan, like Brenda with an N. So, I mean, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I think my name is the same pretty much everywhere. So I'm always happy to have conversations about pretty much anything. Doesn't have to be agriculture. I do a lot of public speaking, and I coach people in public speaking, talk about nerdy stuff like Star Wars and Harry Potter and video games. So, I mean, I'm always down to talk to people. I just like conversations.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll even have you on again and you can talk about Star Wars to me if nobody else responds.
I would be happy to.
If you're interested in following me, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as The Turtle Stack. If you have something you want to chat about, please email theturtlestack@gmail.com. I don't need an expert, just someone who enjoys something, no matter how simple or eccentric. If you're excited to talk about it, I'm excited to listen. Just remember the rules. No slamming, no selling. Thanks for listening.